So good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. Welcome to this edition of the STARS webinars. I am Tony Schönenberger, I'm the Executive Chairman of STARS. Today we have the great privilege to talk to Martin BOSSHARDT. Martin, welcome, good to have you on this webinar.
Thank you so much, Tony. Great to be here.
Martin is the CEO of Anapaya Systems. The company helps its clients to upgrade today's internet into a reliable, secure, and scalable network. Martin has 20 years of leadership and entrepreneurial experience in the network and the security space. And Martin will be one of our keynote speakers at the next STARS Symposium in Switzerland in September of this year. In this session, we are touching a most important topic, i.e. cybersecurity. Since the pandemic and the increasing use of the home office, the number of cyber attacks increased significantly. No doubt, an effective protection against cyber threats is key for business and the society as a whole. And no doubt, the risks regarding cybersecurity are rising. Just think of, and I mentioned it, the home office. Think of the transport of ever more business data. Think of all the geopolitical risks, etc. So Martin will give us a short presentation into the topic. Then we have a Q&A session. If you have any question, please type in your question in the Q&A feature below. And I would like to encourage to do it as quickly as possible because the 30 minutes are over very, very quickly. So Martin, let's start. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. This is very exciting. I believe the whole topic obviously got a lot of momentum. So I'm trying to share here a couple of slides. The internet changed the world. I think we all agree on that. Let's change the internet. That's a bold statement. And especially, maybe you might ask, why should we change the internet? I mean, it works pretty well. And actually, I agree. But the whole discussion got a lot more momentum, obviously, then also driven through the war in the Ukraine. Suddenly, the internet became one of the most relevant infrastructure in the defense strategy of the Ukraine, communication through the internet, but then also, obviously, we see a lot of attacks to bring down infrastructure based on internet. And now the question is, can we protect against these threats? And especially also, why is this happening? And I think it's important to understand what is the foundation of today's internet. And it's actually pretty exciting to see. I mean, this started in the 80s. Kirk Lockheed from Cisco and Yakov Rector from IBM, they had lunch and they discussed in the 80s, there were many networks around the globe already existing, but these networks could not talk to each other. So the question was, how can we make sure that data can travel from one network to another network? So the internet per se is not a network. The internet is an interconnect protocol that connects existing other networks, and that's very important to understand. So what they did, and that's the story is called the two napkin protocol story. So these two napkins, that they happened through lunch, and then the third napkin was done, I think, in a coffee session later. So you find these three napkins in a museum, and it's actually the design of today's internet, and it is pretty much untouched since then. And you also see the Mac from the 89. So this is a pretty old technology we are based on. And obviously, internet was never designed to really cope with what we are using it today. So what is BGP, the Border Gateway Protocol? This is the protocol that connects existing networks and creates the interconnect network, the internet. BGP is nothing else but a compass. So basically, if you send data in a network and these data need to travel to another network, they get through BGP information in what direction data needs to travel, but they get no information where the route will lead them to the target. So you will reach the target sometimes, usually works, but if not, you don't know exactly why. BGP just tells you the direction. And I think the picture of the Titanic is a pretty nice picture of the internet. The direction was great, but the route was not. And this happens a lot in the internet. And this is also the foundation why we see a lot of attacks. It's very hard to understand from where attacks are coming from. And it's very hard to segment to make sure that your data is traveling the way you want. You cannot really influence that. Another important driver right now is IoT. Internet of Things brings a lot of new devices on the internet, and these cheap camera devices, sensors, temperature measurements, all these kind of devices, they're very purely managed, and they introduce a lot of security issues. And obviously these security issues then can be explored and used for to attack the internet based on these weaknesses we have from the 80s on BGP. So 2020 was an important year. In 2020, the number of IoT devices exceeded all other devices. And that is now accelerating a lot. So we are really in an inflection point on what internet is used and how internet is used. And we see this also on the denial of service attacks. The number of attacks is increasing dramatically, but then also the magnitude, the power of those attacks are tremendously increasing. So we are familiar a lot with E-curve since COVID pandemic, but this is a classic E-curve we are facing here. So that's a huge problem. Another issue is we are using the internet today for super critical applications. Wherever you look, you suddenly realize, whoa, if internet is not present, we have a problem. And payment is one important aspect. So if you talk to a national bank, the national bank will give you, basically a national bank needs to make sure the trust in money remains solid. Now, you can do that with price stability. That's the main mandate of every national bank. So basically you influence the money with interest rates, and we read a lot about that. And that's also pretty well understood how this works. Another thing is the financial system stability. That's basically the question, if you own money in a bank account, what gives you the trust that this account is not just disappearing in cyberspace at some point? So there are a lot of regulations, a lot of measures to make sure these data of accounts are not just disappearing in cyberspace, and they're safe and secure. That's very, very important to make sure a currency remains stable. And then there is the third pillar, secure payment system. If you own money, and if you have fundings, but if you're not able to transfer the money, if you're not able to pay with that money, the trust in money will disappear relatively fast. And this is a very scary development that basically most of the payment systems are depending more and more purely on internet. Cash is disappearing, it's all going to the internet. And that is then also why the Swiss National Bank, when they heard about the research project at ETH from about how to upgrade today's internet, they were very interested. So Thomas Jordan, he is the president of the Swiss National Bank. He heard about this initiative, and he immediately said, "Okay, let's have a look at this. We wanna explore if the Swiss financial services industry could depend on a more reliable, more secure internet." And we did a lot of research. So the research started in 2012. And then in 2018, the first commercially available router was on the market. So this is the spin-off company from ETH called Anapaya is producing these routers. And then in 2019, we were able to deploy the first research networks, also an international network for the government. So we are connecting some embassies around the world with this technology. And then what's very exciting, in 2020, we were able to deploy the first Swiss secure finance network, basically connecting all the banks using today's internet fabric, but with a far more secure internet protocol called SCION instead of the classic border gateway protocol. This network went productive in last November, and what's very exciting, we expect this month to go live with the interbank clearing network of the Swiss financial system. So that's a huge network. And the game changer of this new protocol is, in a way, it's just introducing a GPS for internet. So basically you don't send your data just into a direction, you send your data direct on a very precisely defined path. So you're in full control where your data is traveling. You're also in control who sees where your data is traveling. And these are obviously very, very important attributes a network needs to deliver to be secure, attributes that were never designed in today's internet. And we hope a lot that this project now in Switzerland, we are connecting now, we are in the rollout of connecting more than 300 participants for this interbank clearing network. The interbank clearing network is clearing 2.9 million transactions a day. That's representing about 180 billion Swiss francs a day. So this is a very, very important network. And obviously that we can now upgrade this infrastructure, existing infrastructure, being capable to transact far more transactions than in the past. Instant payment is right on our front door. So we need this upgrade of these networks. But what's really exciting that we can use the internet fabric for these kind of applications. So that led to the situation that the large providers in Switzerland did upgrade their internet infrastructure. So they enabled their internet infrastructure. And that made it now possible that we reach approximately 80% of all Swiss internet users. So Switzerland is in a way the first country where we have a second internet infrastructure available, a very secure, very controllable internet infrastructure. And then obviously, given the relevance of internet for all nations, for a lot of businesses, we hope and we believe that this topic is now not only longer discussed, but also that we really take actions to upgrade the global internet infrastructure. It actually is not very hard to do it. It's really an upgrade of some routers, but it is a very, very important mission to make sure that internet can really cope with what we are used to use it today. So that's really the intro I wanted to quickly give you to also explain where we stand and why this entire initiative we believe is very, very important for the world.
Thank you very much, Martin. It's really exciting to listen to you. And actually, the developments are really breathtaking. I mean, you mentioned it. It's more secure, faster. Is it also greener? Or what are you expecting in the next 5 to 10 years?
That's a very good question. Actually, the moment you can choose where your data travel, you can obviously also choose that you want to use, let's say, the greener data centers, or you want to use greener networks. It's actually, it makes a big difference whether you route data along the sun or through the night, because the moment you route data along the sun, you have far more solar power used by data centers and network providers. And it can actually make quite a difference. There is a research project running currently. What would be the magnitude of carbon footprint optimization potential by this technology? I think it's an important aspect. Most important aspect, I believe, is really that we can use the internet in a way that we really can trust it. Today, we are using the internet because it's there, but in a way, it's hard to trust. It's very easy to attack. It's very easy to take it off. It also was, I think it was pretty shocking to see that President Zelensky, he asked RIPE. RIPE is the organization who is defining in Europe who can participate in the internet and who not. And he was asking whether they please could immediately switch off Russia. Now you can think this is a good or this is a bad decision to do that, but fact is that a relatively small organization can basically do that today. And that's maybe something we should really think about. And I hope that the internet becomes in 5 to 10 years a very resilient, very robust infrastructure that not just someone can decide whether a country like Switzerland, like Russia, like any country can participate or not. This should be a decision a country takes itself.
Actually, yesterday I read an article about a new foundation, I believe it is. You probably know it, Dfinity. They are working on a kind of a new internet, and they call it the internet computer. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? Is that something completely new?
Well, usually these initiatives are very much based on blockchain. You know, that you say, okay, compute power is distributed, and the moment you can connect these computing power resources to one, that's then sort of an internet of compute power. And obviously distributed computing becomes super important, and the cloud demonstrates how powerful this is. But it is very much dependent on a strong underneath network. And we see a lot of hyperscalers, they are moving to their own networks. And that's a little, you know, I think we should question whether that's a good development, that not only hyperscaler who own a lot of compute power, if they also own then the network, the dependency gets quite severe. So the internet really needs to be stepped up also for these kind of initiatives, as you call them, the compute internet. At the end of the day, there needs a robust network underneath. And right now, the robust networks are always private networks. The internet per se is not very robust.
There is another question from Felix Kottmann. I just read it to you. There was an interesting article in the NZZ today addressing the vulnerability of submarine cables to attacks and espionage. What improvements can we expect from SCION, and by which means would you quantify this improvement?
That's a very good question. The thing is, the SCION technology cannot hinder, obviously, that someone is tapping a submarine cable. If you can tap such a network, then obviously you can listen what is traveling through that network. So SCION cannot hinder you to do that. But the moment you know that a certain network is compromised, SCION can give you the lever to then just not route your data through that network. The challenge today is, even if you communicate within Switzerland, let's say, or you communicate within Europe, you have not really control whether this data is for some reason traveling through Canada, for example. So you have no control where your data really is traveling to its target, because it's all depending on the routes BGP offers. And that's, I believe, a game changer in terms of security, that you decide what networks do you trust when you communicate with a recipient.
Another question regarding companies or the organizations. Are today's business leaders good enough when it comes to IT, to cybersecurity?
That's a burning question since many years, and I think in a way I believe it improved a lot, because a lot of leaders in the past, they said, well, this is IT, don't tell me about it. Somebody, ideally in the cellar, in a data room, should fix the problem. I think this changed a lot. I think most leaders absolutely understand that these threats are very real and need to be addressed in a boardroom and need to be addressed in the top management. So there is a lot of improvement. The challenge I think fire, in a way, you know, if we talk about fire risks, for example, people can imagine how these risks are developing and what the cause can be. In cyber risks, it's a little harder because it's not so easy to see what is attached, and so I believe it improved a lot, but I wouldn't say that cyber risks really are very well embedded yet in organizations. This topic needs to be improved further, and also the risks obviously currently are improving a lot because the dependency on IT is amazing. I mean, it's basically every company can be attacked through IT.
So if you started a new job today as a CEO of a major company, what would you do first in this respect?
I think it's just important that you're aware that this is a serious risk, and then second, that you empower your team to really address these risks, and also to have the competence in the team who really also understand the risks on a technical level. At the end of the day, then you can still encapsulate those risks in a way you also encapsulate risks like fire. So you say, okay, in case we lose this system, what happens? In case we lose these capabilities, what happens? Very often these exercises are just not done in a fundamental way, because in a way, if you say, for example, okay, what happens if we lose Microsoft Cloud? It's quite devastating, and then maybe the answer then is just well, we have to live with that risk. But many of those risks I believe we take maybe too easy.
Turning to the society as a whole, what do you think is the worst case scenario for the society?
Well, I think in our society depends a lot on electricity, on utility infrastructure, and the internet became a critical infrastructure that is controlling a lot of very critical infrastructure. So I think a worst case would be that you can really stall, bring down such a network for a longer time. And that's actually a scenario that is not completely unlikely. In contrary, BGP is based on trust. BGP, which is the foundation of internet, is a network that can be sabotaged or attacked, and that would be for me in a way a worst case scenario, that we lose internet capability for a relatively long time. And I believe the consequences would be quite severe, because payment systems do not work anymore, healthcare system doesn't work anymore. We have a lot of services that do not work anymore. All the home office wouldn't work anymore. So it is pretty severe how dependent we became from internet.
You mentioned Ukraine, President Zelensky. I would actually have expected more cyber attacks from Russia. It didn't really happen. Do you have any explanation?
Well, I mean, an important attack that did happen was the attack to KSAT. KSAT is the largest European satellite network, and obviously Ukraine is a very large country using a lot of satellite connectivity for its internet infrastructure. And the target was to bring down KSAT to disturb the communication in the Ukraine. And that was a successful attack, and the consequences were quite severe for Europe. I mean, we lost a couple of thousand wind turbines in the Nordics, because they are also controlled through that KSAT network. I think there are actually quite a lot of attacks, and then obviously not really everybody wants to talk too loud about those attacks to sort of talk to the world where all the vulnerabilities lie. But I mean, you're right, we haven't seen yet a complete disaster spreading through Europe, but the attacks actually are quite severe.
Do you know how sophisticated are actually states like North Korea, China, Russia to really attack major infrastructures?
That's a very difficult question, and I couldn't really answer on that. But and then also, you know, that the cyber risks, you really need to look into different aspects. So we are very focused on cyber risks related to network technology. I believe these organizations are very, very capable to attack infrastructure. And I mean, we had in the past a lot of examples where this was explored. But then obviously all these nations also, they don't just attack for I mean, you need to have a very clear target, a very clear reason why to do that. But looking at the landscape as an engineer, in a way, you know, if you show vulnerability, it is an attack window for somebody who wants to explore that. And we have a lot of those. And then I believe these organizations, these states, are very capable to first to be aware of those attack windows, and then second, also to be potentially capable to explore those.
There's a question from Peter Wiedel, he's CEO of Waypoint. How important is training of the board and of staff with regard to cybersecurity, and what would be the quick wins?
That's a very good question, and actually it's super important because, you know, let's say you own a secret, whatever secret that is. If you tell that secret to the wrong people, you are a threat for an organization. That's completely not new, but the problem is that a lot of people are not aware the moment they own a password, giving them access to corporate infrastructure, they own exactly such a secret. And I believe it's very important to train an organization to be aware that the moment they access infrastructure in a company, that they access data, that is based on limited access, and that limited access usually is based on security measures. Very often are connected to a password and then some measures. So it's very crucial to understand how do you need to behave to not hand over your access to that infrastructure to someone you don't want. And you can bring technology measures to make this harder to lose those accesses, but you cannot fix the problem for good just with technology.
I have two final questions. We are running out of time, Martin. First question is, you have been a leader, I said it before, and an entrepreneur for many, many years. What technological disruption did you not expect in the recent months or maybe recent years?
That's a good question. I think probably all of them I didn't expect, but the exciting thing about those disruptive developments, they're relatively slow. Usually, you know, if you see stuff moving 2% a year, 5% a year, suddenly it gets a momentum that's pretty impressive. One development I don't see right now is blockchain. So I'm really excited to understand if I'm wrong there. If blockchain is really changing the world, I might be proven wrong. There are some indications it might be really changing the world. So I'm really excited to see that. But it's also, I think it's a slow development. But these slow, constant, steady developments, they are actually really then disrupting the world. It's usually very slow. So I think we all see it coming, but we usually always underestimate the impact.
So we have a new terminus, slow disruption.
In a way, it's completely weird to say that, but you know, if you look at the E-curve, yes, I think it's disruption is really based on steady developments that in a way then change suddenly with the magnitude that most probably was unexpected.
But if you look into the next, let's say, 3 to 5 years, could you somehow describe to us next possible technological risks you see?
I think the risks are all pretty clear and pretty known. I think the biggest risk would be not to address them. And I see a couple of those. I mean, the hyperscalers, we depend a lot on them, and I believe this is a very important risk we should address also as societies, to understand how can we manage those risks. If everything is with one company or two companies, it is a certain risk. And then obviously the dependency on that infrastructure is a huge risk. But I think it's nothing new I'm telling here. It's more like the biggest risk I see is that we do not really act on that, and sort of just, you know, develop into these dependencies and don't understand what the risks are attached to it. And then that would be a very, very sad and a missed opportunity, because everything that's man-made you can fix, right? All the man-made risks you can fix.
Great. Time is up, unfortunately. First, I want to thank you very much for these brilliant insights. I think we learned an awful lot. And I also believe the message is quite clear. Be prepared for more cyber attacks, for more cyber threats. Cybersecurity is key for any kind of business and certainly for the society as a whole. So Martin, I wish you and your company all the best and every success. And we very much look forward to welcoming you at the next STARS Symposium. The next webinar is on 5th of May, in a week from now, with Philip Joost from SICA. And his topic will be how to manage disruptive trends and developments in business. I hope to see you there. Thank you very much. Goodbye and take care.